start off the bat with Netflix. I think let's just get right into it. So, what's your initial impression on Netflix, and how do you think they've? Obviously, we know they've been successful from the beginning, but where do you think they're going in the future?
They're definitely trying to push their own original content a lot harder now, especially because all these other studios and such are coming out with their own streaming services, so they're pulling all of that content off. So you're losing Friends and The Office and all these classic sitcoms. You're losing Star Wars stuff, Marvel stuff, DC stuff. They're all going to their own studio streaming services. But Netflix has also been successful in making their own content. Things like Stranger Things, very popular. Black Mirror is a Netflix original, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so like they do put out very good content, and as we said earlier, they're the company. They're like the face movie and television streaming because they're one of the first, and this is what you think of.
Right.
I think they have that advantage going for them.
And that's a good point. I do think there's been a joke. Also, guys, let me know in the chat what you guys are thinking about Netflix. Do you guys think Netflix is kind of going to stick around? But really, to be honest with you, I worry for Netflix because there was a saying that anything. I don't know if you saw one of the most recent Rick and Morty episodes. They actually joked about this, but really anything can be a Netflix show. You can make anything a Netflix show because they just at one point they were putting so much money into their content that they were just accepting any premise, right? They're just making any TV show, any remotely plausible series idea they were all about and on top of. So. There's kind of this question of like, are they just wasting money? But what we're seeing is, and this is good and bad, but what we're seeing is like they're starting to kind of step back from a lot of their more risky properties, a lot of the properties that were even mildly successful. They're stepping away from those and really heavily investing now in the properties that are doing well. And obviously you want to see that, but there were some properties that were like good, but they just didn't really succeed much. And like, for example, Ozark, I've been hearing that Ozark is canceled. I don't know if I'm pretty sure that's definitive now. And sorry to be the bad news for anyone that is an Ozark fan out there, but Ozarks was a really good show that was successful, in terms of being critically reviewed. It was a good show, but it just didn't have the support. And one of the big things, and I want to ask you about this, is a lot of people are raising the point that one of the biggest issues is that they aren't marketing for content they're creating. So they're creating these big shows, they're putting a lot of budget behind them, and then they're putting nothing into the marketing and just thinking, if we drop it on the front page of our Netflix channel, that people will watch it. And that's just not been the case. So what do you think? Do you think that's a marketing issue? Or do you think it's just the quality of the content?
Yeah, I think it's a marketing issue. How a lot of people joke there's so much content, but they can never find anything to watch. They don't push you in any type of direction. They just throw all these titles at you to see, and they don't do a good job marketing outside of maybe they're more like tentpole series. Like Stranger Things will get marketing, but like the Santa Clarita Diet won't get anything. And I'm still mad at them for canceling that.
Right. Another bad news for anyone that's a Santa Clarita Diet fan. That was another one that got canceled. Which it's such a shame because obviously people really liked that content and it was good. It's just they didn't market it well enough so that the more casual majority of people would find it and stick around to it. So, I mean, really that's what it came down to, is it just they didn't put enough effort into it. And I think for a lot of people, you could be easily disappointed by that and feel like, well, why would I invest? And this is something I remember Robert Meyer Burnett brought up on the John Campea show, which is another show I find a lot of my inspiration from. But they brought up and mentioned, well, why am I going to invest in a TV show on Netflix anymore? Why should I watch a show on Netflix when all the shows I really liked and felt invested in just got canceled. Like, they're not putting the effort in to get all the other people invested in the show. So why should I watch it? Because I don't know that show's going to be around next season. So why waste my time?
Yeah, they really didn't do a good enough job, like, getting the people who came for other properties to, like, stick around. They're like, oh, you're here for Friends or The Office, but, like, out of they're gone, like, they did nothing to, like, intrigue you enough to check out, say, another sitcom that's a Netflix original.
Right, and I think that's another thing, like, that you bring up a really good point, is that they bring you in with the idea of all of these really good shows that you're like, oh, you should be watching this, but then they don't, but they realize it's Netflix. You're going to binge this show, you're going to be done it in 2 weeks, and then the whole idea is, well, how do I keep you around? And it has to be these new shows. There has to be new things. You bring them in with these big staples, and then you introduce them to all this other stuff, right? That's kind of the idea. HBO hasn't seemed to do that fully. HBO's kind of always been, we have one really good show that we heavily invest in. You watch that show, you love it, and then you stick around for that show, right? But that's because they follow the episodic run, where you're going to follow each episode each week, and then they can stretch that out. But Netflix, they don't stretch that out. They drop it all at once. You watch it in a week, and then you have to wait a month or two for the next material to kind of keep your interest. And that's assuming that they can be that quick. But they don't. So, I mean, that's their issue, is like, it's a twofold, I think, right? I mean, or maybe trifold, where it's, their marketing is bad. But they also, they don't market that content, right? So that content's not getting pushed. And then they're not episodic, so you're also, you're getting done the content so quickly, and you have nothing to back up on.
Right.
So do you think it's I mean, I'm hitting Netflix pretty hard with criticism, but I mean, let's talk a little bit about their strengths. What do you think are some of the strengths of Netflix?
I mean, yeah, like, they may not be doing a good job at necessarily marketing most of their original content, but for the most part, I like it still.
Right.
Like obviously, Stranger Things, love it. Black Mirror, love it. They do a lot of, like, stand-up comedy. I don't know about other streaming services whether or not they have a lot of stand-up on their platforms, but I know for sure I'm watching a lot of stand-up on Netflix these days.
Yeah.
And when we were talking earlier about what we get into, you talk about, like, bundles. Like, I get Netflix through my phone plan, so, like, that's nice just to have, like, not have to worry about 2 payments a month, I guess.
Right, because Netflix is what, like, 15 or 17 a month?
I think, like, the most basic plan right now is $9 a month for the, like, most basic.
And that's
plan.
with one user or something, right?
I know it's definitely, like, one screen.
At a time,
to use that
but you get more users, maybe.
I think you can have like 5 devices.
Okay, so I mean, that's not too bad. Yeah, I wouldn't say that's too bad, but yeah, I guess the next thing is, like, you do have good content coming out. I do feel like they're wasting some of their talent by not investing in it on marketing, but. To the same point, I mean, they have the benefit of being the first mover. They have really good content. The Witcher was incredible. I think that's going to be, if anything, could be their saving grace in the streaming wars. Is that GB Crash in the house? What's up, man? Oh, glad to see you're here. That is awesome, man. Good to see you. We're talking about the streaming wars, and we're talking about Netflix. And right now, I mean, Netflix has got some good content. It's got some really good content. Netflix. I just watched. I mean, like you said, Black Mirror is really good. Altered Carbon just came out with its 2nd season. They brought Anthony Mackie in. They did do a lot of marketing for that one. I'll give them credit. I know that they were putting Anthony Mackie out in a lot of news networks. They did a good job casting him for that. So, because I mean, he's a big name right now just because of his Marvel popularity. So that was a good decision. And he also had been on Black Mirror, so I think they had some previous, history with him in that. But they're doing a lot of stuff with new content. One of the ones I just watched which is really dumb, is The Circle, which is it's a social media game show, and it's so ridiculous, but I had to watch it. It was about basically
I really like that one game show you showed me, the 24-hour coin game.
Which one is that one?
I forget what it was called, but it was one where they had to stay up for 24 hours and count like.
Oh yeah, they had that game, right? And that was interesting.
The one guy was like 7 million off.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so context. Anyone watching? There's a game, and I forget exactly what it's called. It's a game show on Netflix original, and you have to stay up for 24 hours counting quarters. Okay, and at the end of the game show, after the 24 hours, you have to guess how much you counted. You couldn't use any device to record it. You couldn't have paper. You couldn't have anything. You could only memorize it. So you had to remember how many quarters you counted for 24 hours while going with no sleep. Then they take you out of that room and they have you do cognition game show, like cognition tests on this game show. And basically, the further you do, the closer you get to winning the money. And at the end, they reveal how close you were, and if you get within a certain distance, you can win all the money you counted, or you can win all the money everyone counted. And it goes really high, so you can win like hundreds of thousands of dollars by counting based on this like game. And this one guy was playing the game, and at the end of it, he basically revealed his count, and he was like, he guessed like 10 million or something ridiculous. And he was literally off by like I just
remember him counting. He's like, I got this down to math. He was like trying.
Yeah, he was so confident, and he was like millions off or something. It was ridiculous.
Usually people are like a couple hundred off at most.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely recommend the show, but it's like it's dumb. I don't know.
If for
it's
nothing
funny.
else, just that. Scene.
Just for that scene, if anything, yeah.
I just remember another Netflix original that I really enjoy. It's called "I Think You Should Leave" with Tim Robinson.
Oh, okay. What's that?
Yeah, it's kind of like a sketch comedy show. It has a lot of like SNL stars who go on it frequently, and it's just little skits that are pretty funny. I recommend checking it out.
Huh. I haven't heard of that one. That's good. I'll have to check that out. I think, but the other one I watched is The Circle, and that was they've been pushing that. It's a social media game show, and you basically go on and you're like basically everyone's in different rooms and you can't see each other, and the only way you can communicate is through this social media platform. And the whole idea is you're trying to use your social media platform to become the most powerful member, and then you use like your influence to kick people out of it. It's a really like basic concept, but like it's like dumb, but it's funny because the characters are actually pretty enjoyable. And like you think you'll like end up hating it, but like honestly, it's a pretty funny show. And we watched it through the end, and it was kind of interesting to see how it developed, because the people like you thought would get like rejected on the show were like the ones that won, or like did the best. Like the people that you were like you loved, but you're like, oh, they're not going to win them over because this is all just like a talent show. But it actually did really funny, so I enjoyed it. It was a good little show. There was catfishes, so like some of the people pretended to be other people. It was interesting. I enjoyed it. I'd recommend it, but it's kind of dumb. The first 2 episodes of Dracula Netflix original are good. Oh my goodness. Okay, so the Dracula show I am so upset with, because the Dracula show was really good potentially in the beginning, and then once they went to it, because it was like a horror show, like a horror movie, but then at the end it became like, oh, I don't even know how to describe it. Like it became, you basically had like, it was supposed to, I felt like it was an isolated Dracula horror movie. That's what it felt like in the beginning. Okay? And so like for what I was watching, I'm like, okay, it's cheesy, but it's good. Like, it's what it is, right? I can't bag on it for being, self-aware. And then it just became like, oddly directional, and then it was like, oh, this is a TV series, not an isolated movie. And then I'm like, how is this a TV series? Like, this seems like a movie plot. But anyway, so some of them are hit or miss, but I do think generally they have good content. But you know what? Let's do something fun. Let's do a survival rating for each of the streaming services. So we're gonna give each of them a rating at the end. Okay? It's a horror mystery, yeah. So
on what scale?
So let's say let's do. Ooh, this is tough. Okay, let's do like just how well do we think out of 10 do we think that this like streaming service is to survive? We don't necessarily have to say like we can have criteria like I think quality of content, I think marketing, I think pricing, I think things like I don't know, like brand awareness. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but just generally, like we can just put it into a 1 out of 10 scale. How likely do we think it's gonna survive? Yeah, GB Crash. I don't know. I got out quick on that show. I finished the first episode, and I was like, because it was like 2-hour episode, like it's a movie. Kind of odd the way it structured it, but yeah, I got out quick. But let's add a scaling to it. So I'm gonna say with Netflix, I really love Netflix. I think it was a first mover. I know that it has a lot of debt, like a lot of debt. Like I'm pretty sure, like in the billions or something. It's ridiculous, like a lot of debt. But that being said, I'm gonna put its survivability. 10 being like I see absolutely they come out on top 100% of the time. Would be like a 10. I'm gonna say Netflix survivability at a 6.
Okay, I would say 7.
7? All right.
Yeah.
What do you guys think in the chat? GB Crash, what do you think? Survivability of Netflix being the, coming out on top of the streaming wars. Where do you think it comes out? Let me